First contact, fatal mistake. The stars had always called to humanity. From the first moment primitive humans gazed upward at the night sky, they dreamed of what might lie beyond. When humanity finally broke the bonds of Earth, spreading first to Mars, then the outer planets, and finally to the stars themselves, they did so with a sense of wonder. The discovery of faster-than-light travel in 2157 opened the galaxy to human exploration, and within a century, human colonies dotted dozens of worlds across multiple star systems. Humanity wasn't alone in the cosmos. They encountered various alien species, some friendly, others cautious but reasonable. Humans established diplomatic relations, trade agreements, and cultural exchanges with many of these civilizations. The United Earth Alliance had become known as fair traders and curious explorers, more interested in knowledge and cooperation than conquest. This reputation served humanity well as they expanded their influence into the galactic community. Captain Alina Reyes stood on the observation deck of the research vessel Horizon, gazing at the unfamiliar star system they had just entered. At 42, she was one of the Alliance's most experienced captains, with a reputation for level-headedness and diplomatic skill. Her dark hair was streaked with silver, a testament to 15 years commanding vessels at the edge of human space. "Captain, we're detecting an artificial structure orbiting the fifth planet," Lieutenant Park announced from his station. "It appears to be a space station or outpost of some kind." "Any signs of life or activity?" Alina asked, moving to examine the sensor readings. "Yes, ma'am. Energy signatures are consistent with an advanced civilization, possibly more technologically developed than our own. No immediate signs of hostility." Alina nodded thoughtfully. "This could be first contact with a new species. Let's proceed with caution. Standard first contact protocols. Send the universal greeting on all frequencies and approach slowly." The Horizon moved forward cautiously, broadcasting the mathematical sequence and simple pictorial messages that had become the standard greeting when encountering new civilizations. For several tense minutes, there was no response. "Captain, we're being scanned," Lieutenant Park reported. "Very intrusive scans. They're probing our weapons systems, engines, life support." Before Alina could respond, a fleet of ships suddenly appeared on their sensors, emerging from what appeared to be some form of cloaking technology. "Defensive posture," Alina ordered calmly. "Shields up, but weapons remain powered down. We're here in peace." The alien vessels were sleek and predatory in design, bristling with what were clearly weapon emplacements. They surrounded the Horizon in a matter of moments. "We're receiving a transmission," Communications Officer Chen announced. "Audio and visual. On screen," Alina ordered, straightening her uniform. The view screen activated to reveal a humanoid alien with pale blue skin, vertical pupils, and a series of ridges along its scalp where hair would be on a human. It wore an elaborate uniform adorned with what appeared to be military insignia. "I am Commander Krelfor of the Krellian Empire." The alien spoke in surprisingly good English, clearly having analyzed and decoded human languages from the Horizon's databases. "You have entered sovereign Krellian space without permission. Identify yourselves and state your purpose." Alina stepped forward. "I am Captain Alina Reyes of the United Earth Alliance research vessel Horizon. We are explorers and scientists on a mission of peaceful discovery. We were unaware this region was claimed by your people, and we apologize for the intrusion." Krelvor's expression remained impassive. "Your vessel has been scanned. You possess weapons technology. Standard defensive capabilities only," Alina clarified. "For protection against space debris and the occasional hostile encounter. We have no aggressive intentions. Your species is unknown to us," Krelvor stated. "You will submit to boarding and inspection. We will determine if your presence poses a threat to the Empire." Alina frowned. "With respect, Commander, we are willing to share information about humanity and our intentions, but boarding our vessel without consent would violate diplomatic protocols established throughout the galaxy." "You misunderstand, Captain. This was not a request. Krulvor's tone hardened. The Krillian Empire does not negotiate with potential threats. You will comply, or you will be destroyed. The situation had deteriorated faster than Elena had anticipated. She needed to diffuse the tension. Commander, perhaps we could. Captain. Lieutenant Park interrupted urgently. We're receiving a distress signal from New Eden Colony. They're under attack. Elena's blood ran cold. New Eden was one of humanity's newest and most vulnerable colonies, established just 3 years ago, with a population of about 30,000 civilians, mostly scientists, farmers, and their families. Show me, she ordered, and the view screen split to display a desperate transmission from the colony's governor. This is Governor Chen of New Eden. We are under attack by unknown alien vessels. They appeared without warning and opened fire on civilian targets. We have hundreds of casualties already and no significant defensive capabilities. Please, anyone receiving this message, we need immediate assistance. The transmission cut off abruptly. Elena turned back to Krulvor, whose expression had changed to one of smug satisfaction. What have you done? Elena demanded, anger replacing her diplomatic facade. The Krillian Empire secures its borders against all potential threats, Krulvor stated coldly. Your colony encroached on space that will soon be claimed by our expansion. Consider this a demonstration of what happens to those who stand in our way. Those are civilians, Elena shouted. Scientists, families, they pose no threat to you. All non-Krillians are potential threats, Krulvor replied dismissively. Now you will submit to boarding, or your vessel will join your colony in destruction. Elena's mind raced. The Horizon was a research vessel, not a warship. They couldn't fight their way out against the Krillian fleet, but she also couldn't allow her crew to be captured. Lieutenant Park, Emergency Protocol Omega, she said quietly, using a code that would be meaningless to the Krillians. Park nodded grimly and discreetly entered a series of commands into his console. Commander Krulvor, Elena said, straightening her posture, I need to consult with my crew about your demands. Please allow us 5 minutes to discuss our options. Krulvor scoffed. You have 3 minutes, Captain. Not 1 second more. The transmission cut off. All hands, prepare for emergency jump. Elena announced over the ship-wide communication system. Lieutenant Chen, record everything we know about the Krillians and what's happened here. Compress it into a burst transmission and send it to Alliance headquarters along with the New Eden distress call. What about New Eden? Park asked, his face pale with concern. Elena's expression darkened. We can't help them, not with this ship against that fleet, but we can make sure their deaths aren't in vain. We need to get this information back to Earth. 3 minutes later, when Krulvor reopened communications, the Horizon activated its experimental quantum jump drive, disappearing from Krillian sensors before the alien commander could give the order to fire. 2 weeks later, Elena stood in the Alliance Security Council chamber on Earth, concluding her report on the Krillian encounter and the New Eden massacre. The room was silent, filled with representatives from every human nation and colony. The Krillians were thorough, she said, her voice heavy with controlled rage. By the time our fastest military vessels reached New Eden, there was nothing left. All 30,000 colonists, men, women, children, all gone. The colony itself was reduced to ash and rubble. And you believe this was a deliberate act of intimidation? Asked Councillor Mbeki, representing the African Federation. I do, Elena confirmed. The Krillians wanted to demonstrate their power and their willingness to use it. They see other species not as potential allies or even competitors, but as threats to be eliminated. Alliance President Lucia Ortega stood, addressing the chamber. The evidence is clear. This was not a misunderstanding or a limited military action. This was genocide, an unprovoked attack on innocent civilians with the intent to eradicate them completely. The United Earth Alliance has always preferred peace, but we cannot and will not stand by while our people are slaughtered. She turned to the military representatives present. Admiral Jackson, it's time to activate Protocol Themis. A murmur ran through the chamber. Protocol Themis, named after the Greek goddess of divine justice, was a contingency plan developed after humanity's first, nearly disastrous, encounter with hostile aliens a century earlier. It had never been implemented, but every military officer knew what it meant. Admiral William Jackson, commander of the Alliance fleet, stood. "Madam President, are you certain? Once initiated, there's no turning back." "I am certain," President Ortega replied firmly. "The Krelians believe they've encountered a species of peaceful explorers with limited military capability. They need to understand the error of that assumption." Admiral Jackson nodded grimly. "Very well. I'll issue the orders immediately." As the council meeting adjourned, Elena approached President Ortega. "Madam President, I request reassignment to a military vessel. I want to be part of the response." Ortega studied Elena for a moment. "Approved, Captain. Admiral Jackson will brief you on your new command." She placed a hand on Elena's shoulder. "The Krelians thought they were sending humanity a message. Now it's time we send one of our own." Across Earth and throughout human space, military bases that had remained hidden even from most of humanity's own population began to activate. Ships that had been disguised as civilian vessels or concealed in asteroid bases and gas giant moons revealed their true nature. Weapons systems that had been developed in secret but never deployed were brought online. For all their apparent openness with the galactic community, humans had never forgotten one critical lesson from their own bloody history. Peace is guaranteed only through strength and the willingness to use it when necessary. The Krelians had crossed a line. They had mistaken humanity's preference for peace as weakness, their diplomatic nature as vulnerability. It was a miscalculation that would prove fatal, not just for the forces they had sent to New Eden, but potentially for their entire empire. Humanity was going to war. The reckoning. The Krelian outpost at Rigel 9 had no warning before the human fleet emerged from quantum space. One moment, their sensors showed nothing but the empty void. The next, 50 warships appeared in perfect formation, weapons already charged and targeting systems locked. Aboard the UEA Retribution, the newly appointed Rear Admiral Elena Reyes watched the Krelian outpost grow larger on the view screen. The sleek, powerful destroyer beneath her feet was a far cry from the research vessel Horizon. This was a vessel built for one purpose: war. "All ships report ready." Admiral, her executive officer, Commander Diaz, reported crisply. Elena nodded, her face set in grim determination. "Open a channel to the Krelian outpost." The communications officer worked her console. "Channel open, Nam." "Krelian outpost." Elena spoke, her voice ice-cold. "This is Rear Admiral Elena Reyes of the United Earth Alliance. 3 weeks ago, your forces destroyed our colony at New Eden and murdered 30,000 civilians. I was there when your commander, Krulvor, claimed responsibility for this act of genocide. Now, I am here to deliver humanity's response." She paused, allowing her words to sink in. "You have 5 minutes to evacuate your non-military personnel. After that, this outpost will be destroyed. This is not a negotiation. This is justice." She signaled for the channel to be cut. "Begin the countdown. Prepare all weapons." 5 minutes later, exactly as promised, the human fleet opened fire. The Krelian defenses, formidable against most potential attackers, proved woefully inadequate against the concentrated firepower of the Alliance vessels. Advanced shield-penetrating missiles, graviton beam weapons, and quantum torpedoes, technologies humanity had developed but kept hidden from the galactic community, tore through the outpost's defenses. In less than 15 minutes, the Krelian military outpost was reduced to scattered debris. As promised, Elena had allowed time for evacuation ships to depart, targeting only military structures and vessels. This wasn't about matching the Krelians' brutality. It was about sending a message. "All targets neutralized," Admiral, reported the tactical officer. Kryllian military presence in this sector has been eliminated. Elena nodded. Prepare for our next jump. We have more messages to deliver. Over the next 2 weeks, the human offensive continued relentlessly. Alliance fleets struck Kryllian military bases, shipyards, and supply depots throughout the border regions. Each attack followed the same pattern. Warning: time for civilian evacuation, then overwhelming force against military targets. On the Kryllian capital world of Krylshira, Supreme Admiral Vextar, commander of all Kryllian military forces, stared in disbelief at the reports flooding in from across the empire. Bases that had stood unchallenged for centuries have been reduced to rubble. Fleets that had terrorized neighboring species have been outmaneuvered and destroyed. And all by a species the Kryllian Intelligence Service had dismissed as technologically moderate peaceful explorers. How is this possible? Vextar demanded, addressing the gathered high command. Where did these humans hide such military capability? Such weapons? Such tactics? An intelligence officer stepped forward hesitantly. Supreme Admiral, we've been analyzing their attack patterns and communications. It appears that most of their warships were disguised as civilian vessels or hidden in uninhabited systems. They'd maintained a peaceful facade while secretly building a military capable of this. Vextar's inner eyelids flickered rapidly, a sign of extreme stress in Kryllians. And their technology. Far more advanced than we believed, the intelligence officer admitted. Their quantum jump drives allow them to bypass our early warning systems completely. Their weapons penetrate our shields as if they weren't even there. And their targeting systems are unnervingly precise. Another commander spoke up. Supreme Admiral, we've received a communique from their leadership. They're demanding unconditional surrender and reparations for the New Eden colony. They state that if we refuse, they will continue their campaign until the Kryllian military capability is completely neutralized. Surrender? Vextar hissed. The Kryllian Empire has never surrendered to anyone in its 1,000-year history. With respect, Supreme Admiral, the intelligence officer said quietly, we've never faced an enemy like this before. Vextar rose to his full height, mandibles flaring in anger. Gather the reserve fleet. All of it. We will meet these humans in battle at the Carence Nebula and show them the true might of the Kryllian Empire. The Battle of Carence Nebula, as it would later be known, began 3 days later. The Kryllian Reserve Fleet, nearly 300 vessels strong, took position in the nebula, using the ionized gases to mask their signatures and prepare an ambush for the pursuing human forces. Admiral William Jackson, commanding the combined human fleet from his flagship, the UEA Indomitable, smiled grimly as his sensors detected the Kryllian trap. Just as intelligence predicted, he noted to his staff. They're desperate now, falling back on predictable tactics. He opened a channel to the fleet. All vessels, execute Operation Thunderbolt. The human fleet split into 3 distinct battle groups. While the main force approached the nebula head-on, appearing to walk straight into the Kryllian trap, the other 2 groups executed quantum jumps to positions above and below the nebular plane, placing them in perfect flanking positions. When the Kryllians sprang their ambush, they found themselves caught in a 3-dimensional crossfire. Human vessels, using the nebula's electromagnetic properties to enhance rather than hinder their targeting systems, another technology they had developed in secret, struck with surgical precision. Aboard his flagship, Vextar watched in horror as his carefully planned ambush disintegrated into chaos. Kryllian vessels, designed for intimidation and frontal assault, proved ponderous and vulnerable against the more agile human ships and their unconventional tactics. Supreme Admiral, his executive officer reported, voice shaking, our forward line has collapsed. We're losing ships faster than we can coordinate our defense. The humans are inside our command and control cycle, anticipating our orders before we can execute them. Vextar stared at the tactical display, watching as the proud Kryllian Reserve Fleet, the most powerful military force in this quadrant of the galaxy, was systematically dismantled by an enemy they had grievously underestimated. "Signal the retreat," he ordered, his voice hollow. "All vessels, fall back to Krell-Shara. We must protect the homeworld at all costs." But the retreat quickly became a rout as human vessels pursued the fleeing Krellians, picking off stragglers and further demoralizing the once proud Imperial forces. 1 week later, a human battle fleet appeared in orbit around Krell-Shara itself. This time, it was President Ortega who opened communications with the Krellian High Council. "I am President Lucia Ortega of the United Earth Alliance," she stated, her expression stern but not vengeful. "Your military forces have been defeated. Your empire stands defenseless. We could destroy your civilization as easily as your forces destroy our colony at New Eden, but that is not our way." She leaned forward slightly. "Instead, these are our terms: complete demilitarization of the Krellian Empire, war reparations to be paid to the families of New Eden, and your empire will be placed under probationary status in the galactic community, with human observers ensuring your compliance." The Krellian High Chancellor, his age evident in his faded blue skin and trembling mandibles, responded with uncharacteristic humility. "We accept your terms, President Ortega. The Krellian Empire surrenders unconditionally." After the formal surrender ceremony, Alina stood on the observation deck of the Retribution, gazing down at the Krellian homeworld. Admiral Jackson joined her, his expression thoughtful. "Having second thoughts, Admiral?" he asked. Alina shook her head. "No, justice has been served, but I can't help wondering, what if we'd shown our true strength from the beginning? Would New Eden still stand? Would those 30,000 people still be alive?" Jackson sighed. "An age-old question. Does revealing your strength prevent war, or does it simply invite challenge? For a century, humanity chose to appear more peaceful and less advanced than we truly were, hoping to avoid being seen as a threat. In the Krellians' case, that backfired tragically. And now, the galaxy knows our true capability," Alina noted. "Yes," Jackson agreed. "And that changes everything. No species will underestimate humanity again. Some will fear us, others will seek alliance, but all will respect us." In the years that followed, the galactic order shifted dramatically. The fall of the Krellian Empire created a power vacuum that the United Earth Alliance helped fill, not through conquest, but through diplomacy backed by the now acknowledged military might of humanity. Other species, some of which had suffered under Krellian expansion for generations, found in humanity an ally rather than a new oppressor. Trade flourished, cultural exchanges expanded, and slowly, a new era of galactic cooperation began to emerge. On the 5th anniversary of the Battle of Charon's Nebula, now a holiday known as Justice Day throughout human space, Alina, now Fleet Admiral Rice, gave a speech at the New Eden Memorial on Earth. 5 years ago, we learned a painful lesson, she told the assembled crowd, which included representatives from dozens of alien species. We learned that in this galaxy, peace must be protected, that showing restraint can be mistaken for weakness, that being peaceful does not mean being powerless. She gestured to the memorial, a simple obelisk bearing the names of all 30,000 victims of the New Eden massacre. We honor those we lost by building a galaxy where such atrocities need never happen again, not through intimidation or empire building, but through strength tempered by wisdom, power guided by compassion. As the ceremony concluded, a Krellian diplomat, part of the new reformed government, approached Alina hesitantly. "Admiral Reyes," he said, mandibles clicking nervously, "I was a junior officer during the war. I wanted to say that while my people cannot undo the harm we caused, we are learning from your example. Strength need not equal cruelty. Power need not corrupt." Alina studied him for a moment, then extended her hand in the human gesture of greeting. After a moment's hesitation, the Krellian took it. "That," she said quietly, "is the most important lesson of all." Across the galaxy, species watched and remembered. The peaceful explorers from Earth, the humans who had seemed so benign, had revealed themselves to be among the most formidable forces in known space. But unlike the Krillians and other expansionist empires before them, humans wielded their power with restraint, striking only when provoked, conquering only when necessary. The day the Krillians crossed humanity had indeed sealed the galaxy's fate, not in fire and destruction as many had feared, but in the painful yet necessary birth of a new order. An order where strength was respected but not worshipped, where power served justice rather than ambition. It was not perfect, it was not without conflict, but it was, perhaps, the beginning of something better.